about, don't know if you follow much that sport, but in Argentina, we used to have Maradona, may he rest in peace. And the typical leadership in I can't say soccer, but soccer for our listeners, most are American, was this guy who, is in front of the pack and he fights and he kicks when he's kicked and gets a red card and chest up and cocky and comes from the hood and fights everyone, right? So Messi for many years, he was very resisted back home because he's pretty much autistic, right? He has a principle of Asperger's, and he left the country when he was very young, and he's been raised in Spain but chose to play for Argentina, and he hasn't won the World Cup yet, so that's why I don't like him. But this article was interesting because they were talking about how types of leadership are changing, right? So now this new Argentinian team, who is a star team, not a team of stars except for him, they have time to see their families, and no one's out there, talking about showing off their cars or being cocky or being bullies. They just they look like a family, and their leader is one of the most quiet guys you'll ever see. And he just plays and he just wants to play, and everything's very private. So I think connecting to your question, I think there's a change in leadership that will definitely require a different kind of skill set from staff and people around them, because now it's about having a safe space and saying how you feel and saying, what, I'm a sub and it sucks to be a sub, but I still want the team to do well. So accepting there's the stuff that's not always great. So actually being strong enough to say if you don't like something in a respectful manner. So that gives room for good and bad things in terms of people doing the psychology of sport, because it's not new, but you know what I mean? Suddenly all these coaches appear, life coaches, and they tell athletes how to focus, with all these techniques that don't apply. So I think is a very developing area of sport, but definitely necessarily moving into the future, because we now have social media, and you make a mistake and 50 million people comment on it. And some of them say, I hope you die or something like that. So it's a different. No, Justin, you're laughing, but mate, you don't even have to go.
I'm laughing because it's so messed up. That's why. That's just my awkward tick of just how awful that is.
You don't even have to go as far as Messi. You can go high school or club sports. People just go on anonymous.
Oh yeah,
like that. And just say, oh mate, you suck. And I know players for a fact. You think they're millionaires. They don't really care. They read the comments.
100%. I mean, shit. People do that because of stupid fantasy football or fantasy sports. It's even worse.
So if you imagine a guy who's a millionaire and plays the highest level of sport and goes and reads the comments from an average Joe sitting in his house telling him he sucks and actually gets affected by it, there's so many things you can tap on into that thing. You know what I mean? There's just more than one problem, but I think is it's redefining a bit of the landscape. I don't know if you guys agree.
I think so too. I definitely do. Fergus, go ahead with what you're going to say.
No, I was just going to say, if you haven't seen the Carlos Bilardo documentary, Fernando, about
no,
very good, it's on HBO. So he was one of the managers during Maradona's period, but fascinating guy. He was a doctor. I think he might have been.
The Bilardo one, yeah. So you say it in Irish, so I couldn't understand it.
So, see, I'm getting insulted, and it's not even a comment on Twitter.
Hey, this is live.
My feelings are hurt. My feelings are hurt.
Are you triggered? Are you triggered?
I am triggered. Yeah.
I'm triggered that you triggered.
Snowflake. I think one of the really interesting things, though, fundamental to all of this, is that it's not that long ago players were amateur. It's not that many generations ago. And so if you look at the psychological profile of previous generations, you're dealing with not a different athlete, but they've come through a different pathway. So you mentioned Messi, for example. He was at Barcelona from a very, very young age. And so they've been in that pipeline. So I think it's very different. I had this conversation actually with Dean Benton, an Australian strength coach, brilliant guy. But we were talking about at an international team as well, it's infinitely more difficult because you pull guys together for a very short period of time. You don't get the opportunity to train them physically to the same degree. So a lot of it is around character, culture, and if you want to call it psychology. But I think that it was interesting, actually, many years ago, Clive Woodward, who was the England rugby coach, I remember spending a brilliant morning with him one time, but he said all of his staff had actually been teachers originally. Every single coach was a teacher, and he didn't have a psychologist per se on board. And he wanted to empower his coaches to deliver the psychology, if you will, to be able to support them. And I think sometimes your strength coach, for example, who spends 2 hours or 3 hours a day with the guys, maybe longer, he has a bigger impact on the psychology of the team than the psychologist who might see 4 guys for 20 minutes in a dark room once a week. So I think the psychology, particularly of the head coach as well, their character, their presentation, their manner, how they carry themselves, that everybody looks to the top. Like, think about it, right? You're in the locker room, you're 10 scores down, everybody has their head down, head coach comes in. Now everybody's watching his body language. If he's coming in stooped, low, that's going to, but if he comes in enthusiastic, everybody suddenly, all of a sudden, their mood changes. Everybody looks to the top and it filters down. So it is very, very important. I think it's very unique as well. And then, you also have the unique cultural personalities as well. What would work in one country, and we're just talking about the World Cup, for example, but what might work in one country would never work in another, just culturally wise. And I think that's something to be very aware of. I've had to move from team to team, and you see it straight off the bat. You come in with the preconceived ideas early on in your career, and you think, oh, I can do it this way, and you learn very, very quickly, no, it's not going to work. Not what I do, but how I did it is not going to work. Yeah. I'm going to have to be softer, or I can be more forceful. But I think having the awareness is the most important thing. That's the first starting point.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. The thing I'm a bit reluctant with, and if any sports psychologists are listening to this, don't take it personal, yeah? But the thing is, like you said, if there's no, I'd say this, if there's no cohesion or consistency in the message throughout the team, there's no point in saying, like, we have mental issues, bring a psychologist, and then coaches or whoever treat the players in a way that's not, aligned to getting everyone together. So it's not like, solving it by just bringing someone who knows psychology,
Think about it, Fernando. Like, you got a guy who's struggling with confidence, and you bring a psychologist in, he spends 45 minutes a week with them, and then they go into the gym every single day, and the strength coach, who may or may not be aware of this crisis, is just beating the guy down in it, like, but just as you would do, because you want to encourage him. You think he's lazy. It's actually a self-esteem issue or something else, or a self-worth issue. And so you can undo it very, very quickly. That's where you're right, the cohesion and alignment. But that also plays into, the game model, how you're going to play the game. Are you going to play it in an aggressive way? Is that the culture? Is that the environment? How are we going to support guys? It's all incredibly, it's all interlinked.
Yeah, also bringing a guy who's be like, okay, so you have confidence issues, so are you going to sit with psychologists? You're going to ask you what's wrong with you, or are you going to fix it? I don't think that's going to work.
Right. I used to say I've never met a good sports psychologist. Now that's a hell of a statement, but that's a while ago. I might not say that now, but it's very, very difficult to find somebody who truly appreciates the intricacies of performing at a high level. And also there are many of the issues that you find at the professional level have got nothing to do with the game. They can all play the game. I can say it on this podcast, but used to joke, like, the definition of stress was when your mortgage, your wife, and your mistress were all a month late. That's got nothing to do with the game.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.